All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal session, May 15th at 10:27 a.m. I will lead us in the flags. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have our calendar session. Do you guys have any changes that you need to be made on that?
I think.
All right, moving on to D, public comment. Is there anybody out in the audience that needs to make a public comment? Anybody online, raise your virtual hand. Seeing none. Next up is department updates. There is none. F is work session. There is none. G is consent agenda. There is none. H is old business. There is none. I is other business. I1 is consideration of approval of an agreement between Yamhill County and the Yamhill County Community Care Organization, Inc. for System of Care Grant in the not to exceed amount of $8,000, retroactive effective March 18th, 2025 through December 31st, 2025.
Chair, I would approval.
There's been a motion. Is there any further discussion?
None.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item J is public hearings. There is none. K is announcements. Commissioner King, you want to kick us off?
And nothing major to report this week. Thank you.
Commissioner Starrett?
Lots going on this week. AOC, Public Safety was a very important meeting, and we found out about a required report to the legislature every 6 years for the actual cost of community corrections to the counties. And they delved into the actual costs and the costs that the capitated rates. So we talked about that. We talked about proposals to the legislature to increase that. Talked a little bit about replacing, they're talking about replacing the state penitentiary. They say it's older than Alcatraz. So there's that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And Alcatraz is a museum.
So far, but
Yes.
it's about to change its
That's what they
function.
said, yeah.
In any event, we also talked about just the deflection statistics in terms of what we expected. The good thing, and you were on the same meeting I was, which is basically that Yamhill County has an exceptional number statewide when it comes to deflection. And although the numbers are not impressive in terms of folks who are assessed and then wind up going through and then completing the program, Yamhill County is way up there and was called out for that. So that was pretty good. Also had a conversation with our emergency manager. Those who are following some of the proposed cuts, the BRICS grant, which is an infrastructure support grant through the federal government to the state, that one has been paused, but so has the EMPG grant, which we know is what funds 50% of Sergeant Young's position. So although there are lots of unknowns at this point, there has been some conversation with the sheriff about an impact to the budget. So we're watching that. And what else? Talked about what's going on at HHS and the HHS subcommittee, and we also had legislative committee, was the Alcohol and Drug Planning Committee, which is something at the state level. We have one, which is a local Alcohol and Drug Planning Commission required by statute. Is that looks like a third of our 18 to 25-year-olds have some substance use problems. We talked about the harm reduction. And what was concerning to me is when at the state, they talk about what recovery looks like. Recovery, they say, doesn't always mean abstinence. But those in the recovery community will tell you that you can play around with recovery and say, I'm an addict, but I'll just drink. Or I'm an alcoholic, but I'll just have one drink. So to play around with that, I think is really, it's disingenuous to those who are trying to be clean and sober to tell them it's okay to use a particular substance. We talked about harm reduction and safer supplies and drug testing kits. And I think once again, what we're doing is we're spending an awful lot of money and we're watching people die. So we're not getting clear. I asked about enforcement. They said that's not really a focus. And we talked a lot about Medicaid. I've also been on the budget committee for Northwest Senior Disability Services again this year. And there are no changes. As I pointed out before, 90% of the funding for this regional aging, area agency on aging comes from Medicaid. And none of that is projected to change, for it hasn't changed since 21. And most of the cuts that did happen happened several years ago. So those calls for concerns about Medicaid funding being slashed, I think we need to put that in perspective. The governor sent out a press release saying that she was outraged by proposed Medicaid cuts. But I will point out that according to the Secretary of State's audit, the state of Oregon is $1.6 million in accounting errors so far. 60% of the agencies have never addressed some of the issues that have been pointed out in former Secretary of State audits. When I was here, former Secretary of State Dennis Richardson did one on the Child Welfare Department. And none of those, to date, none of those problems have been fixed. So when we do an audit, I think we need to be clear that these are problems that need to be addressed. But the other thing is I want to point out, and excuse my grandstanding, but former Governor Kitzhaber, who, as you know, was the architect of the CCOs, which is the Medicaid, in other words, through the CCO, we take Medicaid funding and we help folks with the Oregon Health Plan. He said, for those who are saying any Medicaid funding is inexcusable, he says, the fact of the matter is that Medicaid cannot sustain the way it's going. So instead of saying we can't cut any Medicaid, we have to look at where we're going to cut it, because there's an awful lot of abuse. There have been millions and millions and millions of dollars that were misspent through fraud on Medicaid. So let's take the Medicaid dollars that we have, cut what we don't need, cut the waste and cut the fraud. And I think we also need to cut the narrative that the sky is falling, because the agencies that I'm working with are not seeing Medicaid funding. End of my grandstanding. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Last Thursday, had the opportunity to meet for a regional water solutions with the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments in Carlton. They hosted it. It was mayors and city managers from different cities, from Amity to Carlton to Yamhill, McMinnville. Mac Water and Light was also there present. We're trying to reestablish the Regional Water Committee that was stepped up here years back. COG did receive, COG applied for a $250,000 grant. I believe that the word is that they did receive it through Business Oregon. So they're going to address needs from each city on what would work for regional water, not specifically to McMinnville, because there could be a regional water solution for the West Valley also. So it's more of a 100,000 foot approach to this to see what it looks like to have regional water in grouping these cities together, and including possibly even Perrydale. I know the Amity Mayor, Rachel King, brought up Perrydale because there's a little bit of overlap there with some water issues. Last Thursday was also the Lafayette City Council meeting. It went fairly quick. They approved some e-permitting processes through the state that they're going to switch to by May 28th. You'll be able to do permitting, planning, plan review, and all the associated payments that go with that. Last Friday, finished up the budget message for our tabloid. It's going to get published. I think we submit it by May 22nd, Ken. And then do you know what edition of the News Register comes out on, or what day?
I'd have to confirm with Carolina.
Okay.
It's either
Well, somewhere thereabouts after the May 22nd, you'll see our tabloid for the county's budget come out, and my message. I hope I spoke well for the board on the messaging. We had AOC all day Friday. Monday, we had AOC all day. Tuesday, I was able to catch part of Willamina's city council meeting, gave an update on where we're at with the fair and enacting the fair policy for our transit system. And then I moved on to Sheridan Fire District meeting. I wanted to know what's going on there, see it in person. They seem fairly hopeful that their loan with Umpqua Bank will go through, but nothing is finite on that yet. And I believe they have an ASA meeting coming up
Yes, I met with the tribe's chief, Steve Warden, and we talked about some backup plans and spoke to Chief Les Thomas. We have put together a sort of an ad hoc meeting on the 29th to address a Plan B. But again, as you said, that tax advance loan, they're hoping that will come through, but we still need to discuss what contingency plans we might need.
Sure, fantastic. Also at Willamina, discuss how the assessor is in a new location, just in case somebody there was wondering. McMinnville City Council meeting was my third meeting Tuesday night. That one actually was a long one because they got into a huge discussion about the new bond levy that they're proposing for the recreation center. I believe, and Councilor Chenoweth is here, he could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that they approved to have the city manager start discussing what it looks like and cost to put the $100 million bond levy for the recreation center on the ballot in November, correct?
Understanding is that you've approved that the staff will move forward on prepping for that and seeing what it's gonna cost to do that
Perfect.
against my opposition.
Yesterday was soil and water meeting, first thing right in the morning. Discussed after I talked to Ken about dredging Rainbow Lake. So I asked them about any documentation. They do have it. It's all in print form. So I'll have to get with Travis or somebody that can go review or copy what they've done last time just to kind of set a base coat of what it looks like to start looking for grant fundings or whatever we can find for help to get that whipped back into shape. I'd really like to talk to Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and see if they have any interest in helping, because I know they used to stock that pond with fish. So it'd be great to see if we can do that again. Yesterday afternoon, I had a meeting. I updated the McMinnville Economic Vitality Committee on plans that the county has for vacating the properties as we move into OMI. That went very well, and even got into a conversation about the fairgrounds and what that's starting to look like as far as rezoning that to maximize our value if we do decide to move from there. This morning was Parkway Committee. Pretty much the same discussions going on there. We are going to have a on-site meeting with Merkley's office and a couple other community leaders from around the area and the sheriff to actually do boots on the ground at our three main projects that we've been talking about. One, we'll start at the bypass. The second one is the McDougal interchange and what potential funding looks like there. And I will say as an update, our project did get moved from Senator Merkley's office to Andrew Salinas's office. So now our ask for our community improvement project is through Salinas's office. They do feel like the opportunity is more promising to go through Salinas's office for the $5 million ask, but we still don't know anything for sure. So we'll go tour the McDougal intersection again, and then we'll actually go on to the Lafayette Highway, Highway 18 intersection, which is probably one of the most dangerous intersections in Yamhill County. And that is all I have. So we're going to adjourn at 10:40.